Hello there, people of the internet. I am out here showing off everything inside of my arsenal video by video, trying to earn my way up to 100,000 subscribers. So if you would like to make me reach that goal, then go ahead and hit that subscribe button. That would definitely help out plenty. So if I cannot earn your subscription today, then I will have to try again tomorrow, because I'm trying to put out one of these videos every single day. Does not always work out like that, but boy am I trying. Today we're having a look at probably one of my favorite Mauser variants. This right here is the 93 pattern Mauser, and this particular one is chambered in 7mm Mauser. Now, on the last video that we had looked at, assuming that I managed to put them up in a proper time schedule, sometimes the YouTube review situation doesn't necessarily always allow me to keep to a proper schedule, but the last video I recorded that will hopefully be up before this one, well, that was an 1891 pattern, and it was fundamentally very similar to this one, but there are some big changes with the 1893 pattern. Before we get into it, let me go ahead and talk about, I see some corrosion on the primer on this thing. I'm not sure if this round will go off. This right here is a pretty old 7mm Mauser round. But the 7.65 Argentine round was an incredibly early 30 caliber Mauser round. Well, the 7mm, also an incredibly early Mauser round, but an incredibly popular one as well. And just because of the time period and the adoption and the way that things had happened, typically your 1891 patterns are going to be chambered in that 7.65 round, that 30 caliber round, and your 1893 patterns are going to be chambered in either 7mm or 8mm, with the exception of some conversions that were done later on in the 50s by some various countries to 7.62 NATO, but that's a video or a topic for another video. So 7mm Mauser was a smaller diameter round. Obviously, we go from 7.65 to a 7mm round. It was a flat shooting round, very, very accurate. Not all that powerful, not all that potent, but by golly is it powerful and potent enough to be able to handle most things. I remember hearing a story about how the 7mm round actually went up against the 30-40 Krag and absolutely wiped the floor with the soldiers that were using it. So as a result, the United States actually ended up adopting the 30-06, basing the 30-06 off of the 7mm. And funny story behind that, this right here is Old Sketchy. And I call her Old Sketchy because it's a sketchy old rifle. We got cracks and very poor glue jobs, and it looks like a sketchy old rifle, although in reality it is very much fine and very much safe. But this right here is actually a 308 bolt that I have on this 7mm, and I'm doing that because the case heads are the same. 7mm inspired the 30-06, and they actually have identical case heads, and 30-06 inspired 7.62 NATO, and those also have identical case heads. There's actually quite a few cartridges that branched off from this 7mm round. As a matter of fact, that would make a cool video that I might have to look into down the road. But the 7mm Mauser, like I said, it's just a smaller diameter round in comparison to the 30 caliber round that was adopted by Argentine. It became the 7.65 Argentine, and well, that was a very popular cartridge, but the 7mm absolutely took multiple countries by storm, especially the Spanish. This particular Mauser right here is a Spanish rifle. Okay, let's go ahead and look at some of the differences between the 1891 pattern and the 1893 pattern. Obviously, this has been sporterized. This being Old Sketchy, she has been through the ringer. That's for sure. So a couple of differences, or rather improvements, from the 1891 pattern to the 1893 pattern. There's two really big distinct ones. One being the magazine. We went from that magazine that stuck out about to the point of the edge of the trigger guard, and it was a single stack magazine. That was the 1891 pattern. And we also have a much stronger and larger extractor on the bolt of our 1893 pattern. And there is very Mauser-esque, very reminiscent of what we would see Mauser do basically for the rest of his pattern of rifle. Now, fundamentally, these right here work the same, the 91 and the 93. Besides those two differences, of course, there are a couple of other very minor things, but they're incredibly minor. Typically, from a manufacturing point of view, that's where you would start to see things like that. But this right here is still a cock on close action. What that means is that I have to push a spring, I have to push against spring tension in order to get the bolt home and close it. And that is because the spring is actually, or the sear is actually catching on the sear catch, which is pulled down by the trigger. And whenever you pull that trigger, it gets that sear out of the way. The spring pushes the firing pin forward, which is under that spring tension. That's why you got to fight it. That's how you cock your rifle. So that firing pin goes forward, hits the primer, sets off that round, assuming that the round is any good. During the turn of the century, most of your countries were thinking combat was going to take place at farther distances than what it actually took place at. And so as a result, on a lot of your earlier pattern rifles, your earlier pattern smokeless powder rifles, you will find rifles that are zeroed out for extremely far distances. This particular Utreon Mauser appears to have a minimum zero of 400 yards or probably meters. So I imagine that I'd have to aim probably under my target to actually hit my target. But hey, you know what? I got one single round of 7mm Mauser, and I'm going to try to set this off. The primer on this one is a little on the grody side, so I don't know if this will actually go off. But I did say that I would come out here and at least attempt to fire the rifles for this series. So if just the history is not enough for you guys, there will be a live shooting as well. One of the things I really like about these Mausers is that if you have the rifle cocked, like this right here, the spring tension from the sear will actually assist you with opening that if the firearm is still cocked. Okay, I got a 7mm Mauser round. I actually have a 308 magazine inside of this thing, so I can only feed one 7mm round at a time. The 308 magazine has this little plug, I guess I would call it a plug, like this little thing blocking the 7mm Mauser rounds from going in, and they did that because the 7.62 by 51 round is just shorter than the 7mm by 57, and that makes sense. Of course, whenever I throw 7mm Mauser back inside of this rifle, we run into the problem where now I can't really use my magazine. So I might have to like ground that out or drill that out or do something like that. I'm going to kind of play that one by ear because I've already got a 308 Utreon Mauser. I'm going to keep this one 7mm. I don't foresee me converting it to 308 for any real significant reason. So now we have a round chambered from our double stack magazine as opposed to our single stack. Let me aim at like the bottom of the target down there, pull the trigger, see what happens here. Well, we hit it. And as expected, I did get a little bit of hot gas back in my face. That primer was really not looking good on that thing. All right. Yep, we blew out the primer. Definitely did not look good. And we did crack our case. Fantastic. Some people will tell me that right there is a sign of overpressure. I have fired my 7mm brass. This is probably like the 12th time I've reloaded this particular one. So a cracked case is probably not the culprit from what we're seeing here. And that primer was in really rough shape. This ammunition was not stored very well, and I've had it for quite a while. I know I've been using the same 7mm brass for like a decade and a half now. Oh god, and it's like the same 20 rounds of ammunition. So, I mean, is what it is. Anyway, folks, I don't think I have anything else here to add. We're going to probably take a look at some 7.62 NATO converted 308s, or 1893s. Sorry, I was being bit by something, so I misspoke there. 7.62 converted 1893 patterns. We'll have a look at those on the next video, assuming that is the next video that comes out. The review process with YouTube is really getting in the way of me having a good flow of videos. And so as a result, things are just kind of out of order sometimes. And that's just the way that it goes. So thanks for watching, folks. I do appreciate your time. Like, subscribe, share. The description below has a link to all sorts of stuff. Go check it out. You guys go off, have yourself a fantastic day. Well, now that this right here has been cracked, I don't foresee me needing that brass anymore. Fantastic. I should probably order myself some new 7mm brass. I'll see you guys later. Been a little while since I've done this. Bonnie and Clyde be damned. The poor man's Garen. It's a shame that bolt-action shotguns aren't more mainstream.